to thank you all so much for being here at the Hermosa Beach Museum. My name is Ryan Bassford. I am the Program and Education Manager here. I'm so happy to see you all. Thank you all for coming. A bit about the space first. The Hermosa Beach Museum was first established as a space in 2007, and since then has been devoted to engaging, delighting, and educating through the exploration of history. This has been an organization since well before 2007, though. We started as a private nonprofit in 1987, and since then the museum has provided historical programming and now maintains this space for community events solely through donations. So if you can, please consider donating to the Hermosa Beach Museum or becoming an annual donor today to support the museum in conserving items in the collections, producing historical programming, and hosting events like this one. Thank you very much. A few more upcoming events at the museum. On Thursday, July 17th from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll have a punk art showcase with some local photographers and punk artists, and that will also be celebrating our next rotating exhibits launch. That's going to be in this back room here, and that will be Echoes from the Edge, a cultural history of jazz and punk in Hermosa Beach. So a nice overview of all the great musical history that Hermosa Beach has had. Our director, Jane Erickson, who isn't here tonight, has worked very hard on that with me. Very appreciative of her support. And of our registrar, Amara, who is here somewhere. Thank you so much for all the work you've done on the introductions and research. After that, on Sunday, August 16th, from 6 to 10 p.m., we'll be having our annual gala at St. Cross Church. So that is our biggest fundraising event of the year, celebrating history under the stars. Early bird tickets are available at $100 through July 11th. And regular pricing will be $150 per ticket after that. The theme, as always, is beachwear, so come like you're dressed for a nice night out on vacation. We'll be enjoying dinner, drinks, live music, classic cars, raffle prizes, and auctions throughout the evening, so I really hope to see you there as well. That's always a great time. And now for the event you've all come to see. We are so happy to introduce our guest speaker this evening, who has led birdwalks at Ballona Wetlands and been involved there for almost 50 years, is the CFO for South Bay Wildlife Rehabilitation, so please do consider donating there as well for local wildlife. I will tell you all about that. And he has also run a Wild Birds Unlimited franchise for 28 years. We're so happy to introduce and welcome Bob Shanman. Thanks so much.
Retirement's a blast. I miss all of you. I miss the store, but I had made that commitment to the family, and thank you all for supporting us for the 28 years.
We miss you.
It was really special. So, what have I been doing? We've been traveling a bit. As many of you know, part of that travel is all the way up to Highland Park, where we've been spending as much time as we can with our granddaughter. And we managed to get to Kenya. And last year, earlier this year, we went to the Panama Canal, which was fabulous. And we're headed to Tanzania, Costa Rica, and then next summer we're going to be taking a long 29-day cruise. And if there are no clouds, we will be on the line of totality when the solar eclipse occurs on the ocean to wake our way Greenland. So I say Greenland, so it's going to be pretty exciting. I've gotten very heavily involved with the organization the two organizations that are near and dear to my heart. And one of those is the Friends of Ballona Wetlands, where we've been involved, like Ryan said, since 1978 when they first formed, leading walks up there and doing other things for them. The really big commitment is, many of you will remember South Bay Wildlife Rehab. Ann is retired. The organization has morphed into South Bay Wildlife Rehab and Education, because education is a big component of what we do. And I have become the CFO of that organization and working daily with Christina Jones, who's now the director. And we're taking in birds. But most importantly is that we're looking for a new home because we lost all the facilities that we had up on the hill because the property got sold. So we don't have the big flight cages or anything. We're working towards it, and I'm hoping that within the next year to 2 years that we're able to find the land we need, either not undeveloped or developed, that we can adapt to and create a facility for the birds. So, near and dear to my heart, in case you can't read my shirt, eat, sleep, and bird watch. And I've managed to get out 3 days so far this week. Tomorrow will be the 4th, all of it Ballona. But let me start off by asking, what is a bird? What is a bird? Typical answer is, it flies, but so do a lot of other things. Has a beak, so do other animals. Lays eggs, so do a lot of other animals. But what separates birds from all other animals on Earth? It's so distinct that birds are all in their own class, A's. And that one thing is feathers. People don't think about that. Feathers are just absolutely amazing structures. By the way, if you find a feather, if you want to know what it is, take a picture of it, because you can't have it, and I'll talk about that. You can't keep it. But you take a picture, and you can go to the Fish and Wildlife Service Feather Atlas, and you can start entering data and drill down to find out what feather that, or what bird that feather most likely came from. Pretty powerful atlas, pretty powerful atlas. But let's talk about feathers. They make flight possible. They provide insulation. Birds there are multiple types of feathers that a bird wears, and they all end up making flight possible. They keep them warm. They help attract a mate because of their color. They provide camouflage and defense. And in many, but not all birds, they provide waterproofing. There are birds who can't waterproof themselves. Typical along the coast here are the cormorants. They're a deep diving bird that has to be able to saturate its feathers, so it does not have the oil gland that most other birds use when they breathe to make themselves waterproof. Feathers are 90% protein, and as they grow in, they are living structures. By the way, molting, which we'll talk a little bit about. Molting is the process, not the process of losing a feather and a new feather growing in, but of a new feather pushing the old feather out. And enzymes, proteins in the bird's system control this whole cycle. And it's pretty amazing. As a feather is growing out, there is blood circulating through it. And when the feather gets to the right length, we don't know how it's known in the bird what that right length is. There's an enzyme in the blood that causes the blood to drain out of the feather, and the feather shaft seals off, and it is now no longer a living structure. It's hollow. Otherwise, the bird would be flying around with feathers full of blood and would just be too heavy. So feathers are pretty fascinating structures. The smallest bird in the world has about 1,000 feathers. The largest bird in the world has about 8,000 feathers, and the most heavily feathered bird is from the Arctic, and it has about 25,000 feathers, which are all for insulation. The birds, many birds molt only once a year. A lot of birds will molt twice a year. We'll talk about some shorebirds later. They go through a pre-breeding molt, often molting as they're migrating to very high energy activities. And on the way back in the fall, they molt into a winter plumage. And some birds, like the California condor, can take up to 5 years to go through a complete molt. That's a lot of energy on birds like that. So why do birds always look the same as they go through a molt? Well, if you take what we call a study skin and you turn it inside out, you'll see that the feathers grow in very well-defined tracks. They're not random. So the same type of feather grows from the same spot every year, year in and year out, each bird. Why is it not legal to have a feather? All of our native species, and that's defined as North American birds and birds that migrate through North America, are protected under the Migratory Bird Act of 1916. So for you and me, without a collection permit, it's illegal for us to have a bird, dead or alive, without a permit, the egg, any piece of the egg shell, the nest, or any other part of the bird. And this is to protect the birds. And this evolved out of the slaughter of the snowy and the great egrets in the late 1800s to get their plumes to decorate women's hats. And a group of women in Massachusetts formed a bird club that ultimately morphed into the Massachusetts Audubon Society, which gave them standing to go argue before Congress that our birds needed to be protected. And that resulted in the Migratory Bird Act that still today, hopefully continues, protects all of our native birds. So there are some exceptions to that. The states have a lot of control, but don't take those feathers home. There was a lady on the Hill many years ago who got caught with a crow, and she was looking at fines of $10,000. There was a farmer back in Pennsylvania, I think this was about 10 or 15 years ago, who built himself a private fish pond, stocked it with fish, and what came swooping down to take that fish out of his pond was a bald eagle. He shot it. He got caught, and I don't know if he ever got prison time, but the fine was $100,000. Word to the wise. So who are the two birds with the least and the most feathers? The bee hummingbird, which is about 2 inches long. It's found only in Cuba. Jess, have you been to Cuba? Did you see it? No. Oh, okay. We gotta organize that trip. But the bee hummingbird is only about 2 inches long, and it's estimated to have about 1,000 feathers. The tundra swan, which is in the north and up into the Arctic all year, has about 25,000 feathers, and it's just they're packed in dense because it's got to have that along with its fat for insulation. By the way, if you see a note on the pictures, the Metropolitan Library with a number, those are pictures that I have permission to take and use from Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the World of Birds. The pictures without are photos that I've taken, and hopefully they'll all show up well. So birds are the largest class of vertebrates in the world. That number that you see up there, that 11,131, is the latest count and is the result of a number of organizations coming together within the last, or finalizing within the last month or two, some details, and establishing a worldwide list of birds. There was a list at Cornell. It's still there, but is being phased into this new list that will give some uniformity to the naming of birds all over the country. So right now, all over the world. So all the birds in the world right now are 11,131 species. That's a precise count. They're found on all 7 continents, every ocean and every sea, and they all fall into the class Aves, and that's because of the feathers. When we started birding in the late 1970s, there were about 8,000 species of birds that we knew of. But through genetics, primarily genetics, ornithologists across the world have decided that many of the birds that we had lumped together were in fact separate species. And as an example is what everybody calls the blue jay around here. It's the California scrub jay. When we started birding, it was the scrub jay. Then it became the Santa Cruz Islands scrub jay and the scrub jay. And that included the birds that are found here and in Florida also. Then it was determined that the bird that was occurring in Florida was different enough from the California birds, both genetically and behaviorally and morphologically, the way it looked, that it was a separate species. So there's one bird that's now gone to 3, and most recently it was split. The California scrub jay was split into 2 species, and I'm going to call on Jess. What's the starts with a W?
Woodhouse?
Woodhouse, right. The Woodhouse scrub jay. So what was in 1978 one species is now 4. And all of this is scientifically documented and proven. So where are birds found? In a word, everywhere. This is a map taken from a program that comes out of Cornell University that literally millions of people across the world use, called eBird. And this is a map of eBird sightings around the world. And I'm proud to say that up the coast of Mexico, out of the Panama Canal, I put some dots out of the Pacific Ocean back in March, where we saw some of the birds. So how old are birds? Everybody's heard of Archaeopteryx? Yep. Okay, so that's 150 million years old. And birds are now considered to be direct descendants of the dinosaurs. We have dinosaurs. We all do it, right?
Yeah.
In January, my wife and I went to the Morro Bay Bird Festival, and there was a all-day session on feathers, quote unquote. Turned out to be more of a review of the latest paleontological work coming out of Northeast China and Germany, where they have made the connection between what we call dinosaurs and the birds. Direct descendants. Fabulous work. I wish I had understood 10% of what he was talking about. Way over my head, but it was really interesting. Really interesting. And some of the fossil specimens they've got that show the feathers are absolutely amazing. They're like photographs of what the feathers look like. One of the interesting things that came out of that for me, which I had noticed but never really paid attention to, is that the body feathers on a bird are symmetrical, but all of the flight feathers are asymmetrical. And it's that asymmetry and the curve that results that helps to give the birds the lift to be able to fly. So let's talk a little bit about flight. you know, it's an amazing skill that they have. Amazing times that birds can spend aloft. And some of the numbers I think will knock your socks off. The distances they travel, they can sleep on the wing, and so many other things. But let's get into flight. And I love numbers, so here we go. We're going to talk about the largest and smallest bird, the lightest and the heaviest, fastest flying, both in level flight and in dive, the heaviest flying bird, the highest flying and deepest diving, which I think everybody will be amazed at, the longest time aloft, and some more. What birds can do as they fly will knock your socks off. Absolutely will knock your socks off. So, who's the heaviest bird in the world? Big bird, seriously. Depends on who's wearing the costume that day. But the common ostrich in Africa weighs, the males can weigh 300 to 400 pounds. They're 8 to 9 feet tall. They can run short distances, 35 miles an hour. And I used to have fun when I was working with third graders, explaining that's faster than mom and dad drive down Manhattan Beach. One of the really interesting things about the ostrich is that they end up laying their eggs communally, and then the females leave, and the males take care of the eggs. They brood the eggs and take care of the chicks. Yeah, that's really interesting. When I saw my first ostrich, you can see how bare the legs are. When I saw my first ostrich and I looked at him, my instant reaction was, man, that is some turkey leg. And the smallest bird in the world is the bee hummingbird. Weighs 2 grams. 2 thin knives. That'll come in a few minutes to something else. It's 2 inches long. Body is not much bigger than your thumbnail or first knuckle. And then a bird's length is measured from the tip of the beak to the tip of the tail. So when you see length in a field guide, that's what they're talking about, not how high the bird stands. So anyway, those are the biggest and smallest, the lightest and the heaviest in the bird world. What about fastest? The swifts are amongst the fastest birds, and the white-throated needle-tail, which is found in China, has been clocked at 105 miles an hour in level flight, picking them up and laying them down. Peregrine falcon is considered the birds to be the fastest bird in the world, and has been clocked in a stew at over 200 miles an hour, multiple occasions. The first time was in 1973, in a dive-off of a building in Baltimore going after a pigeon. The pigeon lost. I've seen, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Ballona Creek, the Pacific Avenue Bridge, and the UCLA boathouse. We saw a peregrine falcon one time go from the Pacific Avenue Bridge to the boathouse in about 10 seconds, and all we saw was a cloud of feathers when it got there. The pigeon never had a chance. Never had a chance. Heaviest flying bird in the world. The Cory bustard. The Cory bustard stands about this high, weighs 47 pounds. It's got little stubby wings, not much bigger than, well, they are bigger than what the ostrich has. But he will only fly for several hundred feet at the most. It's like watching a roadrunner come down out of a cactus. It's not much better than a controlled crash. But they can fly. We've seen them fly. We've seen secretary birds fly in Africa, and it's pretty amazing. that something like that can even get off the ground. He has a cousin called the black-bellied bustard, and we literally watched black-bellied bustard disappear on us. And I wasn't 10 feet from the bird. It walked into the grasses. Grass was only that high. Colorful bird while he's out in the open. But he just blended in and went away. If it wasn't for the movement of the grasses, we wouldn't have known where it was. But feathers play a real important part in providing that camouflage. So let's talk about high flyers. The bar-headed goose, which is a bird that breeds in the Arctic, Siberia, has been seen migrating south to India over the hilllands at 28,000 feet, and that is not the record. It's not the record. The highest flying bird in the world is a vulture, Bell's griffin. It's a bird of equatorial Africa, and it has been documented, radio telemetry, with a tag at 37,000 feet. How cold is it at 37,000 feet? It's roughly from sea level to 37,000, 37, so 74, for about 111 degrees colder than it would be at the surface of the earth below sea level. So it's, minus 50, minus 60 degrees, and they're able to fly up there. The bird on the left is an adult, got its head tucked in, neck tucked in. Birds on the right is an adult with a chick. And everybody know why vultures have bare heads?
So they could.
What do vultures eat? Carrion. They have no way of cleaning their head. So if they were eating carrion and they were covered with feathers, they would be subject to getting infections. So they've evolved to have no head feathers. So who's the deepest diving bird? Who do you think? Does anybody have any idea? You don't answer the question, sir. Anybody have any idea who the deepest diving bird is? I'll tell you, it's in the Antarctic. It's a penguin, yes. It's the emperor penguin. And the emperor penguin has been, again, with tags on it, been documented to go 1,850 feet under the water. The pressure at 1,850 feet is roughly 56 times more than it is on us right now sitting in this room. And able to survive. Just mind-boggling. They go down there to look for fish. I don't know how they find them because there's no light down there. But they are the deepest diving bird in the world. So, how about time aloft? Birds, that's an interesting response because albatrosses can stay aloft for quite a period of time. But albatrosses can also land on the water, feed, and as can many other birds. I think this one is going to knock your socks off too. Did I just go past the guy? Yeah. There we go. Yeah. The longest time documented aloft is the common swift in Europe and Africa, Europe, Asia, and Africa. They come to land to to nest. And once they leave Europe in the fall, again with radio tags on them, they have been shown, many of them will stay aloft for the next 10 months until they migrate back to Europe to breed. And the way they do this is that they will, number one, you have to understand that they are insect eaters. 100% insect eaters. So they can, during the day, fly around, and then towards the evening, they spiral up to about 10,000 feet. And from that, they will spread their wings, they will spiral down very slowly. How do they sleep? Well, the same data showed us that they close an eye and can shut down half their brain.
Really?
And when that's rested, they switch. The magnificent frigate bird and the great frigate bird do the same thing. The magnificent frigate bird, it's not unusual for them to stay aloft for 7 days, and the great frigate bird of the southern oceans can stay aloft from 35 to 42 days. They cannot land on, even though we consider them to be water-related birds, they cannot land on the water. They cannot waterproof themselves. And the way they feed is they parasitize other birds. They hassle them to regurgitate their food, and then they'll swoop in and pick it up before it hits the water. What they do, what birds do to survive is absolutely incredible. So let's talk a little bit about migration. It's an annual event. As best we know, it's triggered by length of day. It occurs everywhere. For most birds, it's generally a north-south movement. There's specific reasons for that. Reverses in the fall, and they fly along repeatable pathways. Today, back, I think this was in the early 2000s, at one of the labs, it may have been the National Aviary outside of Pittsburgh, they captured some migrating birds. And the objective of their research was to find out how the birds would react to, they're truly wild birds, how they would react in a controlled environment to changing light conditions. So they captured these birds in the spring and put them into controlled conditions, and so long as they kept the light increasing slightly every day, the birds would orient themselves to the north. When they started to shorten the period of quote-unquote daylight, the birds began to turn and start facing south. How sensitive are they to it? In Costa Rica, the change in length of day from the shortest day to the longest day is 18 minutes. Costa Rica is 9 degrees north. And if you just do a linear calculation, that 18 minutes over a 6-month period works out to be 10 seconds a day. Change. That is enough to trigger the birds in Costa Rica who would come in this way to leave and fly up into North America. So, again, how do they do it? And they navigate by the stars and the sun and the magnetic field. We know that. I know that here, when we have migrants passing through, that if they cannot see the sun at sunset, they will probably stay overnight. And the example that I had goes back into the early 2000s when we were birding at Banning Park. And we had 10 solid days of overcast. The sun never broke through. Every morning the birds come up from the south, stayed in Banning Park, and a lot of them did. And there were more and more birds in there. It got to the point, and I remember this vividly, on a Wednesday morning we had a birding trip out there, and the place was literally dripping with birds. It was the term they used. It was, I mean, we didn't know where to look, there were so many. That night, I remember standing, that evening, I remember standing in the store. It was the second store where we faced to the west. And I saw the clouds clear from the west. And that night was sparkling clear. I went back to Banning Park the next morning and I couldn't find my birds. And all that. We now know that they all also migrate during the day. There's a place up north of here called Bear Divide, and we've now found, I guess they discovered this in about 2016, that they found birds migrating, who we thought migrated all at night, were also migrating during the day, much to everybody's surprise. Now they do bird banding studies and everything up there. It's great, really interesting. So let's talk about two, what I call great migrations. Bird on the right, on the left rather, is the ruby-throated hummingbird. It's predominant and almost the only hummingbird that is found east of the Rockies. In the fall, and they come up from Central America and northern South America in the spring. In the fall, when they get to the Gulf Coast on their southbound migration, they weigh about a gram, 1 thin dime again. They'll stay there and they'll fatten up to almost 2 grams. 2 thin dimes, almost a day. And then they make a non-stop 500-mile flight across the Gulf of Mexico to the Yucatan Peninsula. Non-stop. They weigh 2 grams. Explain how. Oh yeah, and hummingbirds don't glide. Hummingbirds beat their wings all the time. And when a hummingbird takes off, did you know that it is instantly at full speed? They are also the helicopter of the bird world. They can fly up, down, forward, back, sideways. Just amazing. Then there's the story of the rufous hummingbird, which is a western bird. It's also the only hummer that nests in Alaska. Remember on our Alaska trip, being out on the stern of the ship, looking for birds, and this little thing goes, it was headed southeast. It was in August, and it's obviously a hummingbird, and it was making for, points south. A rufous hummingbird was captured in 2007 in the winter in Florida. Mind you, they don't breed east of the Rockies. It was presumed to be a bird that probably vectored from Alaska down to Florida. They caught the bird and they banded it. By chance, that same hummingbird was caught the following year in Alaska, where the rufous hummingbirds breed. If it made a straight line flight, Alaska, Florida, Alaska, 9,000 miles, more likely it traveled with, or as the ruby-throated hummingbird does, across to the Yucatan, back out to the Pacific coast, then back up the Pacific coast into Alaska. and presumed that that migration would have been about 14,000 miles. It weighs 3 grams. They feed along the way. They couldn't make it otherwise. But even so, that is just a phenomenal mileage for a bird that small. And miles to body weight is considered one of the greatest migrations in the world. Just incredible. Speaking of the rufous hummingbird, we have a bird that its cousin that lives here called the Allen's hummingbird. And in the field, you cannot tell the difference between the female Allen's hummingbird and the female rufous hummingbird, except if you get it in your hand. And you can spread the tail, and you can see the notch in the tail. That notch is maybe 4 millimeters long and maybe a millimeter deep. There's no way birds sitting on a branch in February or March looking like either an Allen's or Allen's or rufous female that you're going to really be able to tell them apart. Unless you can get them in your hand, spread the tail, and find the notch. The likelihood is almost zero. After March, or even after the first week of April, it's pretty certain that if you're looking at a female, it's going to be the Allen's female, because most of the rufous hummingbirds are gone by then, going north. So, what is considered to be the longest annual migration? What bird and how far? It's a seabird. We get them off of our coast by sometimes in flocks of hundreds of thousands. And it makes a figure 8 in the Pacific after it breeds down in New Zealand, Australia, in that area. And it's called the sooty shearwater. Its estimated migration, figure 8 migration, is 43,000 miles. 1.5 times, 1 3/4 times around the earth annually. These birds can live 10 to 20 years, so calculate that mileage. Reminds me of the Arctic tern. The Arctic tern breeds typically above the Arctic Circle, migrates to spend our winter south of the Antarctic Circle. Estimated to be about a 25,000 mile round trip, and they've been documented to live at least 10 years. That's 250,000 miles. Plus what it has to fly at either end to catch fish to feed. So it's pretty amazing. But the last one, and I think this is within birding and ornithological circles, this is probably considered to be the single greatest flight of any species. The bar-tailed godwit has a number of breeding groups, one of which is off the North Slope. Bird in the fall flies from the North Slope of Alaska to the southeast coast of Alaska. They got a satellite chip in one in 2007, part of a flock. And they knew that it got to New Zealand. What the world didn't know at the time was how it got there. And with the use of this satellite chip and a battery that was only supposed to last 10 to 12 days, they found that once it left southeast Alaska, it took 9 days to fly 7,100 miles nonstop over water. It can't land, it can't swim, there's nothing there for it to feed on. It has to go all the way. We've now learned how it does that. When it's in southeast Alaska, and actually even before it starts on the North Slope, because that's a nonstop flight also. But what they do physiologically is they shrink up all their internal organs to almost nothing, except for their heart and their lungs. And they double their body weight from roughly 2 pounds to 4 pounds. And that's all fat. And they use that fat as their fuel to make their way down to northern New Zealand and onto Australia. When they get there, they feed ravenously, reconstitute their organs, spend their winter down there, then make a hop from that area to a specific estuary on the Yellow Sea on the East China coast. That's about 4,000 or 5,000 miles. And then go through the same cycle and then back up into Alaska. And the radio chip, the battery in the chip lasted long enough to document the full cycle. So, pretty amazing flight for a bird to be able to go through. It's a beautiful, beautiful bird. There are 4 godwits in the world, and this is medium size. The largest one has the shortest migration, and we'll talk about that one later. So the migration routes are called flyways. The fall routes that the birds use typically are different than they use in the spring. And across North America, there are 4 major flyways. I don't know how this is going to project, but this is from a National Geographic map that was published in 1984, showing the flyways of the Americas, and very complex pathways leading north and south. What is important here to note is that they come right over California. And that goes into some of the other things that we'll talk about why California is so much fun to be a bird. So in North America, my last check, which was about 4 or 5 days ago, we've documented, or in the US, we have documented 1,161 species of birds, roughly 10.5% of the world's birds. In California, we have documented 715 species of birds. So California, believe it or not, is the birdiest state in the nation. So California is really interesting. It's the 3rd largest state. It's long, it's 800 miles long. But because of the bend in the state, we cover 10 degrees of latitude. And, because of the length, we cover 10 degrees of latitude. Our width is only 360 miles, but because of the bend in the state, we cover 10 degrees of longitude. The lowest point is Badwater, Death Valley, 283 feet below sea level. And the highest point is Mount Whitney, 14,505 feet. No other state has a bigger 3-dimensional range in terms of its habitat. There's 4. All the habitat zones found in the continental United States, are also found in California. We're the only state that has that. The Pacific Flyway goes right over the state. It goes right over Los Angeles County and San Clemente Island and Venice. And LA County goes from 13 feet below sea level to 10,064 feet at Mount Baldy. Given the geography of the county, high mountains, deserts, rocky coast, marshlands, and everything in between, LA County has one of the most varied habitat distributions of all the counties in North America. The result is we are the birdiest county in North America. As of last count, which is just the other, again, about 4 or 5 days ago, it's 559 species. This is data that's coming off of T-birds. And for you Dodger fans, you all Dodger fans?
Oh.
San Diego is in second place. So California has 78.2% of all the birds seen, or Los Angeles County has 78.2% of all the birds seen in the U.S. Let me back off. 5%, 5% of the birds in the world, 48% of the birds in the U.S., and 78% of the birds that have been seen in California have all been seen in Los Angeles County. So, yay, team. So because we're, come on, go back. Because we're at the beach, I thought what we'd do is we'd focus on introducing you to some of our beach birds. The only ones that I won't show you tonight are the terns, but we're going to talk about some gulls, the large sandpipers and small sandpipers, some herons and egrets, seabird, raptors, and a couple of flycatchers. These are all birds that you can see locally here at the beach. Let's start with our biggest gull. This is a western gull. It's a large gull with a dark gray back. As in the adult, it has the large red spot on the bill. It has a thick bill, and if you'll notice, out at the tip, it has a pretty big dip. That dip creates what we call the gobies. That red spot is used by the chicks to peck at the bill when they're hungry. And mom and dad will then regurgitate food to it. The bird on the upper right is about 4 years old, just about 4 years old, coming into its first adult plumage. It's losing the last of the black in the beak. It's getting its first full white head. And then this bird down here is a bird that's turning 1 year old. Gulls are tough because they change their plumage every year until they reach their maturity, which is in this case 4 years. And even then, in the winter, they go from having a speckled head, as we see on the right, to the all white head in their breeding plumage. Western gulls truly are western, and they breed along our coast all the way up into British Columbia. Confusing thing is that the farther north you go, the lighter that mantle gets, the back, and it makes it difficult to distinguish it from other birds. So the next one is our California gull. During the winter, it has these ugly gray-green feet, and in its adult plumage, it will get bright lemon yellow feet. Has the red and the black spot on the bill, smaller than the western gull. It has the windows out there at the end. Where's the tail on this bird? Anybody know? Is this the tail right here? Go ahead. Yes or no?
Yes.
It's the wingtips. The tail is underneath the wingtips. Gulls have big wings. So that surprises people. It also gets, during the breeding plumage, this red gape around its mouth and a red ring around its eye. Quite a pretty bird. It's the state bird of Utah. It's the bird that saved the Mormons. They breed inland on alkaline lakes, and the Great Salt Lake is an alkaline lake. They had the outburst of locusts And the gulls just had a feast. They ate the locusts, probably a really good breeding year. But look how different it is from the bird on the upper right that doesn't quite have the full gray, medium gray mantle, and the newly fledged bird down in the lower right. And this is why people have so much trouble with gulls, because you've got to tell them, you've got to really study them to understand what you're looking at. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Just getting out birding is fun. So that's the California gull. It's here in the winter. They're starting to show up now. And this bird is called the ring-billed gull because it has a ring around the bill. That black ring is how you distinguish the ring-billed gull from the others. It has yellow feet almost all year long. It doesn't have the windows in the tail or in the wingtips. When the bird spreads its wings, these will be the black tips out at the end. And this little white spot under here, that's the tails. The wingtips can extend quite far beyond the tail. And again, I'm just to show the comparison. We've got a bird that's roughly 2+ years in the upper right, and a bird that's about 5 months. And I know the ages because when I picked these out of the website, it shows when the pictures were taken, so we know the month that they were in. And my favorite gull is the Huron's gull. I think this is one of the most beautiful gulls in the world. Right now, remember when we were talking about migration, I said some birds don't go north-south? He goes north-south, but he goes south-north. Something like 90% of the Huron's gulls and about 90% of the elegant terns breed on Isla Rosa in Mexico. And their breeding overlaps, and the Huron's gulls feed on the eggs and the chicks of the elegant terns. If the elegant terns can't find food and their breeding fails, then the Huron's gulls' breeding fails. One of the things that we need to pay attention to in terms of protecting our environment. The upper right is a bird that's coming out of its third winter into its first adult plumage. It will lose that black head, and by the time spring for these guys is in January, they migrate in January, he'll have a full white head. And then you notice in the lower right picture that the bird is starting to get some color in the beak, and again, knowing the date the photo was taken, that bird is about 9 months old. The Huron's gulls should be the first gulls back on the beach. This year, things have been a little bit weird. I expected to see them 2 or 3 weeks ago and haven't seen a single one yet. So don't know what's going on. So let's look at our large sandpipers. This is the marbled godwit. These were taken up by Marina Del Rey. The largest of the 4 godwits. It has that two-tone bill. And the bird that I've got shown on the left is most likely a male because he's got a very straight bill. The females will have a slightly upturned bill, more upturned than the males. And these guys are not so much of a north-south migrator, but a northeast-southwest. And they will go into the grasslands to feed. Not unusual for the large sandpipers. They can feel their food. Sandpiping is piping in the sand. They feel their food. And this guy in the lower right was obviously successful. So then you get this character who's got this funny decurved bill. It's called a whimbrel. Oftentimes mistaken for the next bird that we're going to look at, which is a curlew. But you notice that he's got that striped head, which a curlew doesn't have. And a curlew's bill is so very different, much thinner than the two-tone bill of the whimbrel. Again, an inland grassland type nester, comes to the coast in the fall and winters here. Interestingly enough, when you go down to White Point in March, you will also often see large numbers of whimbrels coming up off the beach and starting to feed in the grasslands up there on the preserve. And I think this is because they're getting ready to start their migration, they're changing their diet, and getting ready to go. This is the long-billed curlew. Again, they feel for their food. It's got that deeply curved bill. I kind of joke that it looks like it's been wrapped around a pipe. Oftentimes you'll see them on the beach, right here, probing around in the sand for the little critters that they quite a striking bird. The fourth sandpiper that we see. You ever notice the nondescript gray bird on the beach? Sort of a big sandpiper. It's just kind of gray until it flies. It's called a willet. And the right-hand picture is the willet in the winter. It's just kind of locked. The lower left-hand photograph is of a willet in breeding plumage. Changes his spots. Leopards don't, he does. But they will often occur in huge flocks. When they fly, they've got that striking black and white wing pattern, and they will accumulate here in the winter. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen flocks of 400 to 500 of at Marina del Rey. And they feed both on the beach and on the rocky banks of the Ballona Creek. You'll see them in King Harbor, see them all over the place.
Do the feathers change color or do they lose the feathers?
They lose the feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How big is this one?
It's an interesting question, because the starling has spots, which are white tips on the feathers. Those all fall off at the same time. Yeah.
How big is this one in comparison?
He's the smallest of the four big sandpipers. The long-billed curlew is the largest, and then the godwit, and then the whimbrel. And you'll often see, when you see the willets flying, you'll often see the marbled godwits flying with them in a big flock. But when they land, they will land together. So if they're going as a group, I guess there's safety in numbers. So let's look at some of the little guys. Oh, yeah. Isn't he cute? This is snowy plover cute. So this is the endangered species. There are surveys up and down the coast that have been running for decades to track the snowy plover. It's about 4 to 5 inches long, probably 5 inches long. It is the second smallest shorebird that we get. The smallest is the least sandpiper, which we typically find on the rocks. But the snowy, I've been part of the snowy plover survey out here. These 3 photographs were taken right out here on 23rd Street, over by the Lifeguard Tower. And they hunker down in tire tracks, in footprints, in the waves or the indentations that are formed by the blowing sand. And you can see how difficult it is to see them, how their camouflage, their coloring just blends in. The bird in the upper right, you'll notice, has leg bands on it. And once we got that, when we got that photograph was sent in to the studies being done, because those leg bands tell the researchers where that bird was hatched and how old it is. So they're really cute. And the other small bird that we see on the shore here is also really cute. Those are the sanderlings. They run back and forth like they don't want to get their feet wet. And they can occur in huge flocks. This was on the beach here at Hermosa, and that's probably less than half of the flock that I had out there. There were probably 300 or 400 birds. And they tend to migrate in large groups. The really interesting thing about the sanderlings is just about all birds have 4 toes. Birds stand on their toes, by the way. They don't stand on their feet. This is the metatarsal. That's the ankle. The knee is up there. So birds stand on their toes. The sanderling is the only shorebird that has 3 toes. And nobody's sure why, but it only has 3 toes. But they run back and forth with the waves, and you'll see them probing. Yes?
Do the small guys all have sensed their food in the sand?
Yeah, they're all well, yes and no. The snowy plovers not only probe into the sand, they're in the same family as killdeers, but they'll eat insects. And you will see them quite often on the rack line. And they're feeding off of those sand flies. They're real good at catching them. Real good. But that's all protein too, so that's good stuff. But these guys, all when they're migrating, they will also be molting at the same time. So they will make stops along the way. Let's look at our big white egrets, the 2 white egrets that we get.
Wow.
The great egret has, size-wise, the great egret is 42 inches long, and the snowy egret is, 21 inches long. So you can tell them apart immediately by size. If you don't have them both in sight to compare them, the snowy egret has the dark bill all year. It may not always be shiny black. This is a bird in breeding plumage, but it will always have yellow feet, yellow slippers we call it, the golden slippers. And the great egret always has black legs and feet and has a yellow bill. These are the 2 birds that were slaughtered almost to extinction in the Northeast for their plumes to decorate women's hats. They're gorgeous birds. I don't care how many times I see them, I love them. And I've seen tens of thousands of them. They're just beautiful. But they, somewhere around here, we think there's, north of here, that there's a breeding colony of snowy egrets, which we have not found. The great egrets tend to breed further north along the coast. And believe it or not, they're tree nesters.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anybody want to guess as to how much they weigh? They're tree nesters. They can't weigh a lot, can they? They weigh 3 to 4 pounds. Don't forget, they've got hollow bones. Not true of all birds. The deep diving birds don't have hollow bones. They've got solid bones. So, where did we go here? I hit a button. There we go. Okay, here are 2 of the herons that we get locally. The black-crowned night heron, black crown, obvious. Night heron because it feeds at night or dusk and dawn. And you'll often see they nest in the trees and roost in the trees all around the area. Up at Ballona, they have an incredibly successful breeding year. The female and the male are hard to tell apart. In fact, I don't know how on the black crown. They have that beautiful single plume coming out of the back of their head and that red eye. Going into fall, they'll lose the breeding plume and the red eye will dull up a bit and the feet won't be quite as yellow. And that's all hormonal driven. The great blue heron, again, a tree nester, and it only weighs 7 pounds, as big as it is. It's 48 inches long, weighs 7 pounds. And they're well known for being a nester in the Marina area. And in fact, they killed a bunch of trees outside the sheriff's station that are now gone. My favorite bird, brown pelican. I can sit and watch brown pelicans for hours. California brown pelican, of course, has a famous recovery story from the elimination of DDT. The DDT caused eggshell thinning, and the birds were dying because they were decreasing in numbers because the young weren't able to hatch. They've made a great comeback. Last year, they were having a terrible year because of the lack of fish. They were dying. You saw it all in the news about the birds being taken into international bird rescue and being force-fed to survive. This year it was the domoic acid, the red tide that they had this spring. But they've recovered, and I'm happy to report that we saw about 600 or 700 birds on the breakwater at Marina Del Rey earlier this week. So it looks like they've had a really good breeding year. So sometimes you get a surprise flying along. You'll see an osprey coming along the coast. And if you're really lucky, you'll get him with a fish in his talons. But they'll sit up on top of the mast, the boats. They'll sit on top of the light poles on the pier. Fierce-looking bird. Always fun to see. Got that black mask on the face. Always looking for it. We get a number of ducks in the winter, and this one is called a surf scoter. It's a boreal Canada nesting bird, ground nester, and then spends probably 9 to 10 months of the year on the ocean. And got a male on the left with that white patch on the back of the head and that brightly colored beak. Female on the right. And the reason they're called surf scoters is because they like to hang out in the surf. And after 50 years, I've seen them beyond the surf line forever. Doing the snowy plover survey a year ago spring, got this guy in the surf. Really excited. Okay, we're going to go into our last two. These are two birds that two small birds that you can see zipping around all over the beach and in parks, but especially around the beach. The swallow, the barn swallow, with a long forked tail, is feeding off of again, the brine flies along the rack line and over the beach. They're fearless. They will almost fly into you. And then the black phoebe, which tends to be a very solitary bird, builds a mud nest. If you see two of them together, they're probably mated. But again, they're catching those brine flies, and when we've got a lot of seaweed up on the beach, it's not unusual to see them up there. So I'd like to thank you for having me here tonight, and as I do with all of my talks, end with a sunset slide from Panama City. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
What's your favorite bird?
Favorite bird is the ground. I can sit and watch groundhog for hours if I don't have more pictures of them, because I watch them. What's important to me is to see what they do. Yes.
I was surprised, I lived here in Greenville, I was surprised to hear, first to see birds and birds like parrots. Because I could see this in my.
Well, verified it right here. Don't even get started.
They can have, the parrots can have small bills. They don't all have these giant.
But then I started hearing the squawking and I go to my phone app
Yes.
and identified them as a parakeet. What's the story on parrots and parakeets in LA?
We know about
I'm here.
17 species. You know?
There are a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
They fly over my house.
There's at least 17 species of parrots and parakeets that have established themselves in Los Angeles. These are birds that have escaped. My father told me when he was alive, and may he rest in peace, that when he was a teenager, there was a bird farm fire up in the Pasadena area, and they let all the birds go, and they've established themselves in the wild. And in fact, I don't know if they're still there, but that was up Whittier Narrows, the cardinals that they had in that bird farm established themselves in Whittier Narrows. I don't know if they're still there or not. Yes?
I've heard that cranes were the closest to the dinosaurs. Is that true, or that's just something I heard?
No, that's, they're all descended from the dinosaurs, and there are birds that are farther down the taxonomic list than the cranes. We're at the bottom of the taxonomic list that I think would be the closest to the dinosaurs. Yes, Janet?
You're not gonna believe what I'm gonna tell you, but cranes are my favorite bird. They really are. And I love owls. I find them fascinating, that they can fly and you can't hear them coming.
There's a reason why you can't hear them coming. Think about when you fly. You ever look at the top of the wing and see those little knobs out on the leading edge of the wing? It's to break up the laminar flow over the wing. It's what causes wing whistle in birds. Owls have little barbules that stick up that make them silent.
I have one more question. Obviously, it's about parrots, but are parrots and crows counted in when you're counting birds?
Crows, absolutely, because crows are native species. Don't get me started on crows, because I like them, except for the baby crows when they're calling.
We have two on my street right now
Yeah.
that are deciding they want their parent to be.
I'd have to look at some of the list to see how the parrots are being treated. Do you know offhand, Jess? I know.
Pretty arbitrary, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Peafowl
Yeah.
are not accepted,
No, they were, peafowl were introduced.
which is just crazy.
Yeah, pigeons were introduced, starlings were introduced, house sparrows were introduced.
So there could be more species that we have here in California than we realize.
Yeah, but they're, I think they're counted in terms of the species of birds that have been here, but they're not counted as native species.
Right, right, that I understand.
Yes, in the back.
Why, do you know why the vultures go so high? Because it can't be for prey. What is their purpose of going up to 37,000 feet or however? What is?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can only speculate that it's because they're moving back and forth across the equatorial portions of Africa. And it's a hell of a lot cooler up there than down on the ground. I've been on the equator, when it's 90 degrees. Yes, sir.
Got some pretty good sized trees on my property, and a couple of times a year there was little tiny olive green birds, kind of a black strip and a little teensy tiny bee. And there's dozens of them, they're all over it. Do you have any idea what those are?
And 15 of them will fly into the tree, then 22 will fly into the tree, and then 14 leave.
Were you there?
They're called bush kids.
They're all what?
Bush kids. And first of all, they're adorable. Yeah. In my next talk, I'll talk about land birds. They're a very interesting bird. They've pretty much finished nesting, and they're going to start flocking up. And during the winter, it's fairly typical to see them in flocks of 50 to 60 around here. And then as we get through the winter and go into the spring, they'll start getting into smaller and smaller groups until they'll pair off. They build a very interesting sock-like nest, very raggedy, can be 10 to 12 inches long. And you look at it and you wonder, how does it hold together? And they'll have, in urban areas like this, they'll have 4 to 6 eggs. Interestingly enough, in rural areas, they will lay up to 8 to 10 eggs sometimes. And non-breeding members of the group will help the parents feed the young because it's just too much. Great story that I love to tell was of a bush tit nest that I saw at the backside of the Natural History Museum some years ago. Bush tits will pick up anything to weave into their nest. And there in this nest, where love is happy, there were 2 Hershey Kisses ribbons. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, could you talk a little more about where pelicans go? Like when you see them coasting around back and forth, where do they go at night?
They'll find safe haven on the rocks in King Harbor, Marina del Rey. They typically won't be on the water. So you go down to Marina del Rey at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you look at the breakwater out there, and it wouldn't surprise me to find 1,000 pelicans out there. I've seen as many as 6,000 out there.
How is it they fail to make a good V compared to Canadian geese?
What?
The pelicans seem to make a very poor V compared to, say, the Canadian.
They're not migrating. The Canada geese form that V when they're migrating to conserve energy. And they periodically, the lead bird periodically move to the back of one of the 2 legs of the V, and another bird get up in front to break the air resistance. And pelicans don't do that. They're not migrating that far. Their primary breeding area around here is Anacapa.
But they'll still do a line.
Sorry?
They'll still do a line for the same.
Yeah. The lines will have the same effect.
Well, sometimes it's partial.
Right? Yes, sir.
I always wonder about the wing-tipped feathers on raptors and like the red-tailed hawk, that are individual feathers, they stick up, and curve up, they don't connect to each other. Are they used for flight control, or boat control, like airplanes aileron?
That's exactly what they're doing. Amazing, another amazing thing about feathers is they can control those primary feathers. Yeah, I mean, think of all the musculature that has to be inside the wing, micro muscles to control the feathers. It's instinctive, they don't think about it, they just know. My dream is, I either want to come back in the next life as the lens for a National Geographic photographer or a red-tailed hawk. I have red-tailed hawk stories from Ballona that just wonderful birds. Any other questions? John?
I've been photographing, I believe what was a red-tailed hawk down at the Esplanade the last couple of weeks. And the other day, there was two. And I'm not sure if one of them was teaching other flying lessons, or was that maybe mates?
Hard to tell, because they're both things are going on right now. They may fly, like many of the raptors do. You'll often see them flying over the hill outside of the breeding season, and if you see them together, the male and the female will be the larger one. The male will often hang his feet down, and that's believed to be, as if they're flying together, that's believed to be part of the bonding ritual that they perform. It's known that they will also go up high, lock talons and crumble. Right now, if you've got two birds together, if one is squawking a lot, then it's probably the youngster begging for food. But most of the youngsters should be starting to feed on their own by now. Breeding season is pretty much over for the big birds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I live near the Greenbelt, and years ago we saw a kite, white-tailed, black-tailed kite, and it would hover, and it would catch rats and eat them. Then it got hit by a car or a truck. Do you see any of them around?
That's sad. It is. But I'm hoping tomorrow morning on the AARP walk that I'm leading. I'm usually the oldest member. I'm hoping to show the folks a kite tomorrow.
Where would that be?
At Ballona Freshwater Marsh. Taking a joke.
What time?
Well, I have one other question. The blue butterfly zone in El Segundo, that's all fenced off, the end of the runway. Do you ever get back there?
Nope. And I missed my opportunity.
How's that?
Well, there was an event, my annual migration celebration up at Ballona a few weeks ago, and I was talking to the gal who's in charge. And so many other things going on, I didn't get a chance to ask her, how can we get a group in there?
Yeah.
But having said that, and you'll be interested in this, Jess. Well, I told you earlier today, we now have El Segundo blue butterflies breeding on the saltwater marsh at Ballona, behind Gordon's Market. We have a patch of buckwheat where they're breeding, and they've seen them flying in the last few days. Karen? Yes? I'm sorry. Yes? Yes, you.
Jim, I don't remember the specifics, but recently there was an article that I passed on to them about a dinosaur that they had found that is older than we thought, with feathers. It was very detailed. I think it was found in China. Do you know anything about
I
that?
haven't seen it.
I'll try to locate it and forward it then, because
Yeah. You know anything about that, Joe?
Yeah, there's a story in one of the papers about it. I think if you look it up on the internet.
Talking about old dinosaurs.
it was supposed to have really, really clear feathers.
Yes, sir.
50 to 60 years ago, I'd spend the afternoon at the beach. After school, I'd go surfing, and you'd see these I'll pick there were seagulls, but the migration back.
Excuse me, did you see it out here?
Oh, no. Excuse me?
You saw it out here?
Well, played
That's
already.
bay.
We were played already, but
That's a bay out there, so it was obviously a bagel.
the birds were walking about 2 miles from the line of birds were about 2 miles. And they just, the line of birds flying north would be about 2 miles, just between hours. Is that migration field change?
There's a lot of, during the winter and the spring, or the fall, winter, and spring, there is a lot of movement up and down the coast. It's a good fishery out
I
here.
mean, you physically see it. My mother would live in the Palisades, and she'd come after work, pick us up, play already, and drive to her house, to have some, and the birds would be all the way to Temescal. You'd start in Imperial Highway, and the birds would still be, hours later, the birds would still be flying up north. And it just seems that
Sometimes you'll get a string like that.
it's going to be more common 50 years ago.
Yeah, I have seen that. Okay, I think